So I will talk to you about collective management for biodiversity in Flanders. Therefore, I want to show you first quite a typical image of Flanders. As you can see, we live in a very urban area with a high population density and not so perfect rural planning. This leads to a high pressure on the land and also a lot of tensions between different sectors like farming sector, nature, NGOs, industry, which want to develop. And there is only a limited space, of course. This makes us to leads to a complicated relationship between farming and nature. On one hand, you have the farmers who are very high productive on this small area, but on the other hand, they are also blamed because of the intensive nature of this farming for decreasing farmland biodiversity, water quality, soil erosion, and that also causes some tensions between the sectors. When I started in this sector in 2008, 30, 40 years ago, large-scale nature development projects, they also led to a lot of concern to farmers that they would lose extra land, it would lead to extra restrictions, and they felt very powerless about this because this would have a great impact on their farm business viability. So this, of course, increases the complexity of the tensions. But on the other hand, there were also other voices in the farmer union Boerenbond. Some people thought, is there a more proactive role possible for farmers? Perhaps can we turn this demand for nature conservation also in an economic opportunity for farmers? We were also inspired by the farmer groups in the Netherlands and also some government agency thought, yeah, maybe if we have more coordination, it could lead to more results as well. And therefore, we started a project in 2008 led by Boerenbond and some nature government agencies, just to experiment with this collective approach to check if it's feasible, if it's possible in Flanders. I was hired on this project together with two colleagues on the field, and we had the mission to see if farmers could work together locally, how this could work. But I must say the start was not so easy because there were barely examples of collaboration between farmers on this. So we couldn't say it will work like this, very concrete. Also, when we went to farmers to talk about this, like in many cases, in many places, they said us, yeah, but cooperation between farmers maybe in other regions, but not in this region. In this region, farmers are not keen for cooperation. Other farmers, they were skeptical. They said, is it wise to be involved in this? Because won't we get an extra restrictions later on? And also from nature NGOs, they were very skeptical because it's an initiative of the farming sector. So it was not so easy to start this. But actually, we succeeded, and after 2 years already of project, we had 6 farmer groups, and now 13 years later, we have 34 groups of farmers all over Flanders. It's not fully covered yet, but we are covering it step by step. So how, and they are working on a diversity of topics like landscape management, water management, soil management, biodiversity. There's a big diversity between the groups. But how did we do this? So we started to use our strength because it was an initiative from the farmer union. We communicated our ideas through the farmer networks, networks of the farmer union. We spread our ideas, and because it's a trust, these are trusted channels for the farmers. They were more open to our story than when it would come from outside the sector. We didn't look or talk about very theoretical advantages of cooperation, but looked very site-specifically what could be, in their case, in their local case, a win-win solution for farming, for nature, that is practically possible, but also financially, legally, and so on. And then when we had examples, we demonstrated also to other regions. We first started very locally, and then we spread these examples to other regions. In the beginning also, we organized excursions to the Netherlands when we didn't have examples yet, to show how it could work, that they can learn from each other, because that works best. If farmers can see it in real life and learn from other farmers, it's more easy to convince them. Maybe one of the examples which we started working on was about landscape elements. Landscape elements, as you know, they are very valuable for biodiversity, for heritage, for recreation. They have a lot of societal values. Also, here you see we have hollow roads in Flanders covered by trees. They are also important for erosion control. And farmers used to manage them over centuries. It was kind of a typical management to cut them every 5 or 10 years, so the trees could rejuvenate, and they were used many functions. But over time, the functions, they disappeared, and also the maintenance disappeared, which leads to a decreasing value, and also it becomes more a burden for the farmers. So we thought we have to find a solution for the maintenance of these landscape elements, because otherwise we can't ask them to plant more if already those who are there aren't neglected. So we sat together with the farmers, and we saw also that several farmers have plots next to these landscape elements, that they should cooperate on this. It's not efficient if every farmer does part of this landscape element to maintain it. It's more efficient when you organize it in a group. So there are practical questions of who's interested and capable to do this. Where do we get the funding to pay the management work? And also legal issues. Are farmers allowed to do the work for others? How do we arrange the payments? What about landscape elements owned by others? What if something went wrong about liability? So these were all issues we had to solve, and we did this. We developed some solutions for this. Like, for example, we agreed with these farmers that they all, because we have individual contracts, individual payments, that they all applied for individual payments to the government agency, and that we collected part of this money to the group, of which the farmers who are doing the management work are paid. And in that way, the farmers who are specializing themselves in doing this landscape management, they can get an extra income. Of course, there are risks involved as well, and it's not so easy than if we would have directly collective payments, but we had to deal with the situation. We also made collective landscape management plans together with the farmers, with other actors also, to take into account the different values of this landscape elements, recreational, biodiversity, and so on. Then we organized the management work, and over time we also looked for more efficient machinery, which is collectively used to make this management work faster and a bit less time consuming. And over time, we also developed projects on how we can create added value of the residues of this management, and turn wood chips into heating, or to use it for solar sequestration. So in that way, we are looking for added value to create more support for also planting new hedges in the fields. Another example where we find good win-wins for farming and society is about collective water conservation. Now in these periods of climate change, the extremes are getting higher of drought on one end and flooding on the other end. And there are a lot of ditches, and they are always used for running off the water. But now the farmers feel it's important also to keep the water, to conserve the water more. Before there was a lot of drainage, we introduced adjustable barriers in the ditches and also experimented with level controlled drainage systems. Of course, if one farmer does it, it doesn't have a real effect, but if a lot of farmers in an area does it, it can have a real impact on less flooding problems to lower villages. Some farmer groups are working on farmland work measures, also on a landscape scale, that they coordinate who does which kind of measures, that they are a mixture of measures. Some groups are working on botanical grassland management. We also experimented in one group with result-based payments. Other groups are working on meadow birds. So there are different topics. But what's the added value of this collective approach? Why does farmers be involved in this, and what's the advantage for society? On one hand, you have the coordination at landscape level and improved knowledge, which we think will lead to better results. On the other hand, also more efficient management. Sometimes it's also said during previous discussion that people think it considers more time or effort for farmers to be involved in the collective, but it doesn't always need to be like this. If you can work more efficiently, some can specialize on this kind of management, others can specialize on other tasks. So it can also reduce efforts for individual farmers. One very important element for farmers is getting more recognition also, because when they do it in a group, they are more visible and they can get more social support. Because, like I said in the beginning, farmers are often blamed for environmental issues. They want to do a lot of things, but they feel it's not always so visible. So when doing it in group, it's possible, and they feel more empowered. So there's more ownership, more participation, and it also gives opportunities for collaboration with others. And another important aspect is that they can get support, advisory, when they are in a farm group. So what do we do for advisories? We help them with knowledge exchange, also in a group and between farmer groups. We help them with applying for funding, development of landscape plans, follow-up of the management work. We organize events for the groups, we do communication, networking, also some lobbying advisory from all the experience we have and the bottlenecks we see in policy making. We try to combine them and advise the governments. What are the challenges at this moment still for farmer collectives in Flanders is that still a lot of farmers fear that if they do extra efforts for nature conservation, that at a certain moment they will change it in a nature reserve and they will lose their land and will get extra restrictions. So this lack of legal certainty is a fear for participation for some farms. Another practical issue is that as farmer groups are no beneficiary for subsidies, we have to deal with all these transaction costs, like I explained before. Also one element is that funds for agro-environmental measures, we are going to the limits of this, while there are still a lot of efforts needed to change the trends. There are more possibilities coming with the new CAP, but they are also leading to more dispersion of funding. And yeah, there are no structural funds for facilitation support of farmer groups. So we are all also limited in resources of the number of farmer groups we can assist. So what is, how can policy help to foster the collective approach? Of course, farmers should be interested in cooperation. That's quite obvious. But the policymakers can have an impact on this. They can influence this also by having a long-term vision, providing legal security, giving incentives for cooperation, like higher payments, of more flexibility, or group advisory, or removing legal barriers, like allowing groups as a beneficiary for subsidies. We also think there is an important role for facilitators, because yeah, cooperation, it doesn't start from itself. It needs effort. You have to motivate people, you have to bring them together, you have to inspire them, you have to guide them. It's a lot of work, and it's not always easy that someone of the group can do this for the others. It's extra effort. So facilitators can help farmers, give advice, guide them, so that the farmer groups can grow. There are opportunities in the new CAP, like groups of farmers as beneficiary for subsidies. There are possibilities for group advisory, and there is also project support for cooperation possible through cooperation article, operational groups, leader, demonstration projects. So there are possibilities. It's up to the member states to choose them wisely. Okay. So that was my presentation.